Well, after this show, we're going to be basically talking about trades and free agency for more or less a full week. We're looking forward to next week's editions of Fantasy Football Today. Today, we're going to give you a little bit of a preview of that with the DK Metcalf news, with Christian Kirk being released. We'll make a bold prediction about free agency or trades in just a moment. We're also going to give you tips for building your roster, how to build it the best way. And the Fantasy Cops are coming on the show later today. We haven't heard from the Fantasy Cops in a while. I don't even know where the music is. There it is. Yeah, soothing sounds of the Fantasy Cops music. I'm Adam Azer with Jamey Eisenberg and Dave Richard. Give me a bold prediction for free agency or a trade that will go down sometime in the next week. Who wants to start?
Najee Harris to the Raiders.
Yeah. DK Metcalf to the Patriots.
Ooh, that was mine. I wrote it. I typed it and everything, Dave.
You think they'll be stupid enough to pay what Diana Rossini said?
A first, a third? I would hope not, but a third and then giving DK the money that he wants. And it's an early third.
Would you do it for a second-round pick? Would you give up an early second-round pick for DK Metcalf?
No.
No.
Yeah, first and a third is reportedly what the Seahawks are looking for Metcalf. I just would be surprised if
it takes one team.
It does.
There will be no team giving a first and a third.
I hope not.
I got another one.
What about the Bills? Would the Bills give a first and a third?
No.
I mean, look, would they?
No.
Again, I hope not, but it wouldn't surprise me if one team does. All it takes.
If Buffalo really wanted him, maybe they could be compelled to give up their second for DK Metcalf and another pick, like a 6. But I got another prediction for you.
Okay.
Cooper Kupp to the Jaguars for a conditional 7th round pick.
Okay. How do we feel about that?
Have fun drafting him.
Right. I mean, he would take over the Christian Kirk role. He knows Liam Cohen and what this offense is going to ask of him. Seems like a fit.
I'm trying to find. There we go. I'm trying to find what the Bills gave up for Stephon Diggs. So it was a 7th round pick and a 1st round pick. I don't know why it was listed that way. I'm reading this article. They gave up a 1st round pick. Oh, they got a 7th round pick. They got Diggs and a 7th round pick for a 1st, a 5th, a 6th, and a 4th in next year's draft. So this was 2020 and 2021. That's a big haul. So 22nd overall pick, a 5th, a 6th, and a future 4th for Diggs and a 7th. That's what happened.
He was 26.
Metcalf's 27.
Or was he 25 at the time?
I could look that up, but I feel like Metcalf was probably more accomplished than Stephon Diggs at that point. Diggs really took off in Buffalo, but let's see.
Accomplished in what you think of a player are totally different things.
He was going. I don't know that anyone thought Stephon Diggs was anything like what he became. His best year was 1,130 yards, and then 2020 he went to the Bills at age 27. And put up a 1,500-yard season.
I recall I said a few times prior to him leaving that he would be one of the guys that we say may never live up to his potential because of the team that he's on.
Do you feel that way about DK Metcalf? And they've never.
I think DK Metcalf is what he is.
Which is what?
Which is a very good number 2 receiver
for fantasy,
for NFL.
Okay.
All right, well, listen, I want to give everybody a quick heads up about next week. So usually we record at 10 a.m., Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Schedule is going to be a little bit different. We're going to let the news dictate it. If there's big breaking news, we'll probably hop on for a bonus podcast. But as of right now, our tentative plan is certainly Monday. Hopefully, I'm thinking Monday through Thursday, if based on previous seasons, about 3:00 p.m. Eastern. So no matter where you are, you should have a show for your afternoon commute home. That's roughly what we're going to do. We'll kind of recap the day's events, but if there's a lot going on, we might hop on for more shows, but we're going to have a lot of programming for you next week as free agency opens. And even though when can teams officially sign players? Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday. Yeah, we'll know on Monday where guys are going. So we'll keep you updated.
Well, the 10th is the open window of negotiating. It's already been happening for weeks.
Right. But the 10th is when we're going to start getting the reports of this guy's going to this team. That's Monday. So we'll have a lot for you next week. So news and notes, the Jaguars are releasing Christian Kirk. The Seahawks are releasing Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf has requested a trade. Just a real quick thing here. 3 career games without DK Metcalf for Jackson Smith and Jigba. 16.3 points, 12.9 points, 37 PPR fantasy points, 7, 7, and 13 targets in those 3 games. One of them in 2023, the other in 2 in 2024. All right, but let's talk about Kirk, who's 28, and Metcalf, who's 27, both coming off disappointing seasons. Metcalf was 30. Let's see what he was per game. He was 32nd per game in half.
Second worst season of his career.
Yeah, and this is after 3 straight years basically finishing as wide receiver 22 or so per game in full PPR. So, So do we think Kirk and Metcalf are due for bounce backs?
I think in Metcalf's case, his last 2 seasons have been disappointing. And you could point to Geno Smith maybe and the struggles of the quarterback change. Look, if he gets with an elite quarterback, which you could say maybe the end of his tenure with Russ was somewhat above average quarterback, there's the chance for him to be a very good fantasy option. You know, he's got 2 seasons on his resume of double-digit touchdowns. He can easily be a 10-touchdown guy. So if he goes to Buffalo, if he goes to the Chargers, if he goes to the Steelers and they fix their quarterback situation, he goes to the Patriots and Drake May has the breakout season that he's potentially capable of. I mean, there's a lot of destinations that will help him. But I think, if you get him with the right quarterback, yes, there's certainly bounce back potential there. If he goes to, let's say, the Raiders and is reunited with Pete Carroll and they're going with a younger quarterback or another, rerun type of guy, then it's not going to be as easy to point to. I think in the case of Kirk, you're looking at bounce back to what? Like bounce back to the 2022 season he had in Jacksonville when he first signed there?
No.
Or just a guy that can be a 12 to 13 PPR point per game type of player, which is, borderline starter. So can you get back to that level? Yes. Again, right situation, right team. Like I wouldn't be surprised, Dave, you said Cooper Kupp to the Jaguars. What about Christian Kirk to the Rams? And he replaces Kupp in that role, that would certainly be a good landing spot for him. But if he goes to, let's say, the Packers, and he's part of a crowded receiving core, then probably not so much.
I think Kirk gets squeezed between other free agent receivers and all the wideouts in this draft. I'm nervous that he won't have as big of a role as he had in Jacksonville the last couple of seasons. I think if you look at him and you think a good bench receiver, 10, 11 PPR points, I think you'll be okay. That's short of him going to LA and straight up replacing Cooper Kupp. That would be amazing. I'll take it all back if that happens. DK was on his way to a pretty good year last year. His first 7 games, 15.1 PPR points per game. Then he got hurt, and he just wasn't the same guy. So I think that there's potential for him. It does come down to the landing spot and the right quarterback. And Jamey, you mentioned some good places. What if he ends up being the replacement for DeAndre Hopkins in Kansas City, and the Chiefs just go all in on improving their receiving core? I think it would be a little silly, might be a little overkill, but I think we'd be very excited about DK Metcalf in that type of situation. And I think he could get around 15 PPR points per game.
Yeah, I don't think they can afford it with what they're doing right now.
They can make cap room.
Look, it's probably not going to happen, but it's just for a fun hypothetical. If DK Metcalf went to the Chiefs, how would you rank the 3 Chiefs receivers, wide receivers?
Man, that's tough. I think Rice would still be the top target getter, and Metcalf might be second, and Worthy might be third.
I don't think I would rank any of them in the top 20 because of just overkill of who's going to be stealing targets from who with Kelsey still there. I probably would, if they are aggressive in getting DK Metcalf would be my favorite Chiefs receiver. Because that would mean that either they think Rice is not healthy or suspended, and Worthy, I'm at the point where Worthy might be better than Rice.
Yeah, hey baby, let's do that. Yep. That's what I'm talking about.
Could be that way if there's a significant suspension for Rashee Rice. There's no question.
Why did I say, "Hey baby, let's do that" to Jamey? That was really strange. So,
It's fantasy. It's exciting. Mahomes would get a bump. Kelsey would get a bump the other
I don't
way.
want to get too down this pretty unrealistic rabbit hole because Jamie's right, and they have like no money to spend, and they just franchise their guard.
But they just got rid of another guard who was making some bank. They don't have to pay him anymore.
DK, so
but they have to fix it. I mean, it's just that's why they're doing it, because they have to pay other players.
So Dave, DK was on his way to a good season. Hold on real quick. Chiefs have the fourth lowest amount of cap space right now. They're actually over the cap. DK was on his way to a good season, but I did want to point out, so in those first 7 games before his injury, he was number 17 wide receiver per game, number 15 per game in non-PPR. Geno Smith was averaging 40 pass attempts per game. So it does cloud it a little bit. Like he only had a 22.7% target share, and that was with Tyler Lockett. Yeah, still, he's on pace for 112 targets actually, Lockett. So in those 7 games, so it was good. Like the raw numbers were good for Metcalf, but when you consider they were throwing 40 times a game, wasn't really that great. Comes back after his injury. JSN is outpacing him, outplaying him, but again, he's only 27, and the 3 years before last year, let's just take a look at where he finished per game in full PPR. He was wide receiver 23, 22, and 23 per game. Last year he was 32nd per game. But we did that bounce back episode last month, and that was one of my guys, and I said I think he can bounce back to being wide receiver 22, 23 per game if he's on.
But if he goes to team with unestablished quarterback, right? So like there's a Tennessee Raiders. Pick your team that's looking to add a quarterback in the draft, or doesn't have their guy right now. Do you still feel that way?
No.
Yes, because he has. So okay, let's take a look at where Seattle has ranked in pass attempts in his 6 seasons. 23rd, 17th, 31st, 15th, 17th. Last year, they were 7th. But before that, never higher than 15th. What if he goes to a team that, like the Raiders? The Raiders were 4th in pass attempts last year. I'm not saying they would.
But it's new quarterback, new coordinator, new coach.
I'm just saying, what if he goes to a team that throws the ball a ton and he is the unquestioned number 1 guy? Could he get you 140, 150 targets? He basically never does that. So he could.
The scenario you're probably bringing up is maybe Tennessee, but with Ridley still there, yes, he's the number 1 guy ahead of Ridley, but at least there's somebody else there. But it's like the Patriots, like Dave said, the Patriots are the team that I think everybody's looking at right now, because they were supposed to be all in on T. Higgins. They have clearly the money to spend. They'll spend the draft capital. I would anticipate, again, not necessarily going all in to what the reported offer is, but a high 3rd, maybe a conditional 2nd, something like that. If he plays a certain amount of snaps and reaches a certain amount of numbers, it goes from a 3 to a 2. But to what heights does he bounce back to? Does he bounce back to the 17 whatever point per game he was in his 2nd season, or does he bounce back to the 14 plus point per game, which he's kind of been living in?
Yeah, right. I don't think anyone's. You look at his player page. We're on it right now. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today. No one's going to project him to get to the 17.6 that he was 17.6 PPR fantasy points per game. In his 2nd season, 1,300-yard, 10-touchdown season. Russell Wilson was a monster that year. I do have to take a break, so we interrupt this DK Metcalf programming very briefly. We're going to take a break, come back, we'll wrap this up. There's some more news items there, and we'll sort of talk about. I want to talk about how Kirk and Metcalf fit in with the rest of the free agent class, and throw in a guy like Devontae Adams as well. All right, we'll be right back after this on Fantasy Football Today.
From sweet to elite to the Final Four.
All right, Dave, I know you wanted to make one more point on DK Metcalf.
Sure. So we talked about the cap space being tight on Kansas City. They're $2 million over the cap as of this show. Buffalo's at $9 million over the cap as of this show. So those 2 teams are probably pie in the sky dreams, but those are the type of teams that I would want DK to go to. to have a shot at being a top 24 fantasy receiver on draft day. Here are the top 6 teams in cap space. You tell me how you would feel about DK on these teams, and then we can move on. Patriots have 120 million plus available. Raiders are next. They've got 95 million. Chargers at 90 million. That would be interesting. Cardinals at 77 million. Commanders at 64 million.
No.
I don't think I'd be happy if he went there, but I would get why they would want to.
There were some there were some Commanders beat writers speculating that Kirk to Washington makes some sense.
Yeah, reunites with Cliff Kingsbury, but they just got Debo. So where does Kirk fit in with Debo?
Debo is not the slot guy that we're making him out to be.
But
I mean, they're also losing Noah Brown, Diami Brown, and Zacchaeus. So it's like, how are you replacing all these guys? And if they're going the veteran route, then it makes some sense.
And we have seen Christian Kirk play outside before. Two more teams.
Not a good version of Christian Kirk, by the way.
They might think that he is. It would just make it easier for us to pass on him on draft day. Vikings have 60 million plus.
Yeah, no.
Steelers almost 60 million.
That would be, because if they're going to sign Justin Fields, I wouldn't really want. Ooh, Russell Wilson and Metcalf.
When you look at it, it's the Steelers were in on almost every receiver last year from training camp through the trade deadline. They're going to be aggressive if they really want to go get him. The Patriots are going to be aggressive to go get him. The Chargers are probably going to look to add a wide receiver. And I think you could see the Raiders making some sense.
So what would be your favorite destination of the ones mentioned?
Chargers.
Patriots will probably throw more than the Chargers will because I think they're going to be behind a bunch. And he would be the unquestioned number one.
Sorry. Okay. Well, it does make things. I guess the last point I want to make, just last point, is that DK Metcalf is 27. Christian Kirk is 28. Kirk is coming off a really disappointing year, especially when you consider the 4 games he played with Evan Ingram and obviously Brian Thomas Jr. He was barely targeted, like a 17% target share or something.
5.9 targets per game on the year.
Right. But even worse than that when you look at the Ingram games. So I only played 8 games. 2 years ago, Kirk was really good. He led the team in targets. He was their guy. Then the year after that, he was better than Calvin Ridley. He barely played week 1. From weeks 2 through 11, I think it was. He averaged over 14 fantasy points per game. So he was still a good player. Last year was disappointing. But you've got a 27-year-old in DK Metcalf who might get traded. You've got a 28-year-old free agent now in Christian Kirk. Their per target, per catch, per route run stuff it still looks pretty similar. It's not like we're talking about washed up guys. It's a bad wide receiver class. If Metcalf gets traded, and obviously Kirk's now available, that's good. I mean, it's better than what we had. It's better than what we had, so it's good. All right, more news items here. The Chargers released Joey Bosa. The Bengals defensive end Sam Hubbard, he retired. The Raiders are expected to release Gardner Minshew. Just so you know, Brock Bowers was slightly better with Minshew than he was with O'Connell, but pretty negligible difference there. All right, Tank Dell had another knee surgery, this time to repair his torn ACL. So he's having ACL surgery in March. He's already had surgery to repair other ligaments. I don't know how you can expect much, if anything, from Tank Dell this year. The Eagles re-signed linebacker.
That's going to be looking at receiver help.
Yeah,
for sure.
They have to.
The Eagles re-signed Zach Bond, linebacker Zach Bond, 3-year deal, $51 million. The Raiders gave Max Crosby a huge extension. They made him the highest paid non-quarterback in football. Cooper Kupp is unlikely to stay with the Rams. We already knew they were looking for trades, but now they say the least likely scenario is him coming back to the Rams. Cleveland left guard Joel Bitonio is going to come back for 2025. And the Raiders are signing Alex Kappa, who was just released by the Bengals, offensive guard. They're giving him a 2-year deal worth about $11 million.
That's nothing. Max Crosby broke the bank, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. Anything else you guys want to say before we talk about our roster building tips?
You don't think you ever talked about Saquon's extension?
I mentioned it yesterday. Yeah.
What else is there to say?
Yeah, kind of how I felt. And there's so many rumors and things right now I don't even feel like are worth talking about because it's all gonna come to a head next week, basically.
Ruff.
Okay.
What a transition.
Best ways to build your roster. I asked you guys for 2 roster tips. Could be draft tips, could be in season, whatever. Dave, why don't you give me a roster tip?
The first thing that I would say is I don't know what the tight end position will genuinely look like after the first 2 guys go off the board. So you're going to have to make a decision on how bold you want to be on Brock Bowers or Trey McBride. But if you miss on one of them, I'm not opposed to double dipping on tight ends and ending your draft with 2 of them. Take 2 shots at high upside tight ends. We've talked about guys that have that potential. Tucker Kraft and Isaiah Likely. Literally the season ended and we started talking about those guys as players that can be good fantasy factors next year. There's going to be other guys that come into the fray, certainly some rookies that could end up being a factor. I like the idea of getting a couple of tight ends on my team, as long as maybe even if I do get Brock Bowers early, I get Tyler Warren late, or I get an Isaiah Likely around round 8, round 9, if he lasts that long. Who knows where he'll end up going. But that's a position that I want to double dip on, take 2 shots at trying to find 1 stud.
Okay. And that I'll just transition to draft 2 quarterbacks. And my roster tip is draft 2 quarterbacks. Don't let Jamey make fun of you. Draft 2 quarterbacks. Even if you draft an elite one, you don't have to draft 2 quarterbacks. Okay. This isn't an ultimatum, but if you look at the last 2 seasons, we have had top 6 finishes from quarterbacks who were drafted as QB 10, Dak Prescott, QB 26, Jordan Love, QB 19, Brock Purdy. That was in 2023. Last year, we had top 6 finishes from QB 21 in ADP, Baker Mayfield, QB 12, Jaden Daniels, QB 15, Jared Goff. In addition, Patrick Mahomes has been a bust 2 years in a row. Joe Burrow was a bust as QB 5 in ADP in 2023, and that wasn't just because of injury. Justin Herbert was QB 6 in 2023. He was a bust, huge bust. Last year, Patrick Mahomes was a bust again, as I mentioned. CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson were drafted as top 6 quarterbacks. They were both huge busts. So don't be afraid, even if you draft a great quarterback. There are awesome quarterbacks available late. Keep them away from other teams or get them for yourself. Draft 2 quarterbacks.
Most of the leagues that we play in have 6-man benches. If you have a 5-man bench, are you doing the same thing?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it's not set in stone. I don't have to, but yeah, I will. Yes, I will absolutely be open to it and probably will do it.
So you'll have 4 other roster spots to play with. Until when will you drop that second quarterback if you need to make a move?
Yeah, no, I mean, it could be as early as week 1. You know, okay. It's like any other roster spot, but you don't want to miss out on a great player who could have a huge impact just because he's a quarterback. You want to give me a roster tip, Jamey?
I mean, I was going to say the same thing I say all the time is just wait on a quarterback, and you kind of made the argument for me. Just looking at 2 of the top 5 quarterbacks drafted in ADP finished as top 5 quarterbacks, and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. You referenced a few of the busts from last year. You referenced some of the guys that were taken late or free agents. Don't forget Sam Darnold and how he performed. That finished as top 10 quarterback. So again, year over year, it proves itself out to be the same thing all the time. Now, granted, you got to hit on one of these guys, but to your point, if you want to take a chance on 2 of them late, then it's not a bad move. I just wouldn't do it with a 5-man bench. I think that's a waste of a roster spot with such a thin bench, but because you'll have more quarterbacks available on waivers in those type of formats as opposed to with 6-man benches. You'll probably see more teams taking 2 quarterbacks there. But the point would be is that don't spend an early round pick on a quarterback.
Well,
how early is too early?
First 3 rounds.
Agreed.
I think also, I think the bigger takeaway for me is Jamey changes his bench strategy quite a bit for 5-man bench versus 6-man bench. And obviously, get any deeper than that, you have to draft 2 quarterbacks. You definitely should be drafting 2 quarterbacks, I would say, if you get any deeper than that. But yes, understanding, the bench size, league size, obviously, and what's going to actually be available on waivers should also impact your draft strategy. All right, round 2 of roster tips. Dave.
I mentioned this last year. Let's double dip on this. Patience is needed when you go after those dart throws, sleeper picks, whatever you want to call them, in rounds 8+. I would have hated to have been the guy, and for all I know, I did this in a bunch of leagues and I just don't remember, who drafted Bucky Irving and then cut him after 1 or 2 games and then saw him blossom by midseason and turn into a league winner. I definitely was not that guy with Chase Brown. I had Chase Brown on a couple of my teams and I waited it out with him. You got to have patience, especially the younger that a player is, these rookies that are coming in the league. You know how many rookie running backs we're about to have coming into the league that might make a difference, that might get an opportunity by Halloween? You've got to be patient with them. So when you're drafting, think about that question. How patient am I willing to be with the guy that I'm looking at drafting? And it might be a different level when it comes to somebody who's older. You know, if you're drafting Najee Harris in round 8 and round 9 and he's in a timeshare somewhere, you might be less patient with him than you should be, certainly, with a younger running back. You know, somebody who's in their first, second year might get that opportunity that turns them into a fantasy hit, but not in September.
It's funny you mentioned that with running backs because last year was probably the worst year to preach this tip.
Yeah, right. I mean, Bucky Irving was one of
but I don't think anybody dropped Bucky Irving after he went 9 for 62 in week 1. The guys I think that people were probably too patient with were Blake Corum, Trey Benson, Kamani Vidal, almost everybody at that position, the younger running backs. Jaleel McLaughlin, you know, you don't want to just assign it to the rookies. You know, the guys that were Ty Chandler, you know, the guys that we were saying have a chance to maybe be impact players at some point during the season, and they never were, you know. And so I think those are the ones where this is going to be the case this year. You know, you're going to get, you know, Genty and Hampton probably as potential starters, but you're going to get, you know, probably running backs 3 through 8, which all could be very good players that are going to be in some awful situations, you know. So at what point do you cut bait with some of those guys, you know? So like, I know for me, like I was, and I'm going to be the same thing this year, you know. Oh, James Conner, 29 years old, missed a lot of time, the majority of his career. Trey Benson's going to have a big opportunity. And I probably held on to him too long. I know, Dave, you were big on Blake Corum, you know, coming out of the draft and his opportunity with the Rams, you know, that maybe he's going to push Kyren Williams. You know, I don't know how long you held on to him, but, you know, though that group last year, you know, again, I know for me, like I was a Jaleel McLaughlin guy. I was a Ty Chandler guy. I thought, you know, Aaron Jones is older. Javonte Williams, who knows how good he'll be. Sean Payton, who knows if he likes him, you know, and they never really materialized at all, you know. So it feels like you got to be careful with some of those things. My other draft tip was, you know, and I said this last year when we did this show, and it's the same advice if you're able to do it, is take chances on rookie wide receivers because we see them hit at the end of the season in a lot of ways and a lot of times. I know for me, one guy that I wasn't patient with twice at least. Once I was, once I wasn't, was Jaleel McLaughlin. Jalen McMillan. I drafted McMillan a lot last year because, again, you know, me, I tend to shy away from the older players, get a little worried about it. I thought Mike Evans was going to struggle. And McMillan, I believe, scored a touchdown in week 1. Held on to him a little bit too long. Then dropped him when Evans started to play a little better, obviously the way Chris Godwin was playing. Then when both guys got hurt, I think you recall I was very high on McMillan. I thought he's going to have an opportunity to step in and play well. He gets hurt and was not patient enough with him at that point because, okay, Cade Otton was doing some things. Who knows when he was going to come back? And then it was the scramble to try to get him at the end before the 5-touchdown finish or the 5-game finish where he scored 7 touchdowns. But I think you see it in these drafts, NFL and fantasy. You know, I was looking at it like Xavier Worthy was right around pick 100. Our ADP, Ladd McConkey, was pick 113. You know, so you can get some excellent value for some players that are going to step in and play some significant roles. In the case of Worthy, you would have had to be patient. In the case of McConkey, you would have got rewarded right away. Ricky Pearsall, for example, was somebody that was drafted late, you know, even depending, I guess, when you did your draft. But, you know, you take a chance on these guys that are, especially in good offenses, and hopefully they hit. You know, Keon Coleman, you would have wasted your pick because he didn't materialize really at all. Had a couple of good games before he had the wrist injury. But especially it's not the day 1 guys. It's the day 2 and 3 guys. You know, you take flyers on these type of players and, you know, you hope that they can start to cash in at some point early in the season. You don't have to be as patient, but usually at some point they start to materialize and help you at some point during the season.
How long is too long to be patient? And I don't know if you can answer that definitively.
No, you can't. Again, McConkey, you could see flashes right away, especially with how Quentin Johnston was up and down and, Josh Palmer not stepping up. I think a good example is like Xavier Legette, right? So they make the quarterback switch relatively early in the season. He has some flash games, right? And you're like, okay, now you're getting rewarded for holding on to him. I think it was like week 5 or 6, maybe we started to show up. I don't think anybody was dropping him, across the board at that point. But like Jalen Polk, for example, never really turned into anything. We're not talking about the Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas type of guys. Those guys were being drafted in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, I don't know about Thomas.
I don't think anybody was dropping Brian Thomas. They might not have been.
No one was dropping.
No one dropped him. I just don't remember where his ADP was. It was nothing like Neighbors.
No, and by week 4, he was starting to play huge. So.
I got his ADP on Fantasy Pros at 116th, which is insane.
So around 10.
Around 10. I'll look at.
I feel like he went a little earlier than that, but that's certainly like the end of the range. I would
got him 117th on CBS, right ahead, 1 pick ahead of Lab McConkey, 3 picks ahead of Roma Dunze. We had this conversation, like we did lessons learned with Dan, right, a few weeks ago, and I sort of disagreed with him. But he was more aggressive. He was like, you can't take too many risks on rookie wide receivers. And I was like, listen, we just had an amazing rookie wide receiver class. We knew it going in. And, I don't want to overreact to that because usually it's not like that. Now, you could say it's been kind of 2 years in a row of some success stories like Tank Dell, obviously.
Puka.
Puka.
Oh,
Jordan
Addison paid off.
But that's the I was agreeing with Dan at this point on this topic. Like, it's not. I think Dan was saying you go a little bit earlier, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I have no problem taking late round flyers on rookie wide receivers. I do think that's a great strategy.
So like this is,
but I just want to point out that like it's not foolproof.
And again, I think it ties in 2 of the lessons that you guys both have given. So Dave's preaching patience. It's a matter of how long you're going to hold on to these guys. And I think it's, this is where you start to look at snap count and routes run and things like that. Like, where's the involvement and who are they playing behind if they're not necessarily starting right away? So that matters. So in the case of McMillan, like he was getting worked in 3 receiver sets early, which was kind of my expectation for him. And then did he ever get a chance to step up? Well, it didn't happen until Godwin was hurt. So, he needed one of those guys to miss time. And in my estimation, it was going to be Evans just because he was a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver. I think in your case, Adam, you're saying take 2 quarterbacks. I would take a chance on a rookie wide receiver instead of the second quarterback.
So obviously it's very case by case. I do not think Jalen McMillan is the right example to say you should take a rookie wide receiver over a backup quarterback because McMillan, like you said, was dropped. In fact, one of the next points that I'm going to make about roster building involves how I picked up Jalen McMillan in like week 13 or whatever it was because he was so completely useless for almost all of the season until I don't know, what was it, 5 games?
No, but I'll disagree with you on that because when week 7 happened and both guys got hurt and both went on IR, there was a scramble for many Bucs receivers.
Yeah, right. And he still stunk, right?
No, he missed time. He was hurt.
And then he got hurt, but he had 2 games. Well,
he wasn't great until the last 5 weeks of the year.
So I'm not disagreeing with that point. I'm just saying, like
6 games. I'll give him 6 games.
There was a definite. Who are we picking up for the Tampa Bay wide receivers?
Yeah, but both guys got injured. He was a waste of a draft. Yes. He was a waste of a draft pick, Jalen.
But so is this the second quarterback sitting on your bench that you're not trading?
Not necessarily. I mean, what if it was Baker Mayfield? What if it was Jared Goff? But
if you're drafting Joe Burrow and Baker Mayfield, who are you playing every week?
I think it's more valuable.
Yeah, you're kind of opening the door for a headache. Jamey, do you remember the team that I put together?
Talking here. It's more valuable to have a great player just to keep that player on your bench away from other teams rather than rostering Jalen McMillan, who's doing absolutely nothing.
Okay, but you're bringing up Jalen McMillan. Let's go to Lad McConkey. So let's say that second quarterback that you're drafting is in that same range, and it's McConkey who hits, right?
Yes. Yeah, right. Case by case.
They agreed. Yeah, totally. It's case by case.
I was definitely drafting
McMillan because that was the guy that I was, high on to take with a late round pick. He was going much later than McConkey and Worthy and Odunze and those guys for a reason. But I think the thing about this is like I'm just using how I build my rosters comparatively to yours. So in the case of your situation, Adam, you may have taken that second quarterback, probably not in the same range as McConkey. It's probably later, so you're taking a chance on Baker Mayfield. You said he was a 21st quarterback, so that's probably around 12, 13, 14 in that range.
Well, no, honestly, I think I picked up Mayfield as a free agent. And
whatever the case may be, I was just using the ADP you said. So if it's a free agent or a last round pick, but you're drafting 2 quarterbacks, so you're still taking that second guy. If you're taking that second quarterback, and now especially again 5-man bench, 6-man bench, your receiving core is not great because of an injury or something like that. You're either having to hold on to that quarterback and hope that the guy you drafted is still good. You're dropping that receiver who may become something, or you have to now drop that quarterback. Now you're putting that player back in the pool. So yes, clearly it's case by case.
Can I use a real life example? Huh? Let me give a real life example. Okay, I'm looking at our FFT league. I drafted Jalen Hurts in the third round, 9th pick of the 3rd round. I drafted Ladd McConkey in round 10, Rashid Shaheed in round 11, Tank Bigsby in round 12, Justin Herbert in round 13. So, I think we're in agreement here. I'm not taking my second quarterback over Ladd McConkey, over a rookie that I think would be really good. I'm taking him. The next pick was Jerry Jeudy, but who could have known? Gabe Davis, Kamani Vidal, Trey Sermon, Adonai Mitchell. That's who I took Justin Herbert over. So I think that's the point for me. I think we're in a complete agreement here.
And how did you hold on
to upside rookie wide receivers over a second quarterback?
How long did you hold on to Herbert?
Probably not that long. But I ended up with Mayfield in this league. Or Goff. Yeah, actually, no. I ended up with Goff, Jalen Hurts and Jared Goff. Right. This wasn't my Mayfield leagues.
My argument would be you drafted Justin Herbert only to drop him not that long, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You had Justin Herbert and you dropped him. You could have done that with a running back or a wide receiver as well. And if Justin Herbert had gotten off to a decent start, you wouldn't have dropped him unless you absolutely needed the roster spot. And trading quarterbacks, this is what I was going to ask you about, Jamey. Do you remember when we did a salary cap draft, and this is when RG3 was a rookie. I had RG3 and Matt Ryan for like a total of $4. And I tried they were both having a monster year. I tried all year to try and trade one of them. Couldn't get a taker. Couldn't get value that I thought was even remotely fair for one of them. It was a headache. I had to make a tough decision every week with who to start at quarterback. And then I had to clog a roster spot with the second QB. So be careful what you wish for. If you're in a league where you think you can trade quarterbacks, then I get it. You should do this.
Yeah.
But if you're in a league with people that are like, well, look, I can just go to the waiver wire and find a core. I can pick up Geno Smith and use him as a spot starter. And that's what people are going to say to you when you try and offer them Justin Herbert off your bench. You're not going to get great value.
I'm not trying to trade these guys necessarily. I think, look, let's say Justin Herbert had hit. I'll tell you one player I could have traded was Jalen Hurts. And here's the other thing. We tell people all the time, handcuff your running back or get a running back handcuff, even if it's not your running back. Just get a handcuff in case there's an injury. Well, if you only have one quarterback on your roster and your quarterback is Josh Allen or whoever, and that quarterback gets hurt, you can't just pick up that guy's backup and throw him in and say, okay, I'm getting great quarterback replacement value.
No,
you might be screwed. So we spend draft picks on running back handcuffs like Blake Corum, who may never do anything, instead of spending late draft picks on basically quarterback handcuffs. If you just think of it as a quarterback handcuff, then I think you can justify it a little bit more, because what if my starting quarterback gets hurt? I certainly would want to have a good one on my bench. Now, look, I understand our leagues, quarterbacks don't get drafted as frequently as other leagues, so the waiver wire is a little bit better, but not always. Like, I don't want to get Geno Smith. I'd rather take a chance on a guy who could be a lot better than Geno Smith. So if my quarterback does get hurt, I've got somebody that I can plug in on the bench.
Yeah, it's not a negative to do that at all. I just think it's how you draft, know your league, how many bench spots you have. Like, I just think it's tougher when you have only 5 bench spots, which is what our free leagues are.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, for sure.
If it's a 10-team league with 5 bench spots, the waiver wire will be rich with quarterbacks.
No, I'm not taking 2 quarterbacks there.
But I think it's also like, and this is probably the only thing I would not completely disagree with you, but just disagree with you.
Sure.
Is if you are spending an early round pick on that guy, then I think, you're kind of wasting a draft spot taking somebody, unless it's like your last pick.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's going to be less emphasis, but I think taking Justin Herbert in round 13 in this draft was fine. I wish things had turned out better for
What
Herbert.
other quarterbacks were there? You said Baker was on free agency.
Aaron Rodgers was the next one. I closed the draft results, I think.
You remember who you dropped? Go to the transactions. You remember who you dropped Herbert for?
Sure. I could do that. Let's see.
Oh, man.
I dropped him for, I don't even know it. I just dropped him.
Just for nothing.
I dropped him probably to make my roster compliant. I added, Wan'Dale Robinson in a 3-receiver PPR league.
Cool.
Well,
I bet Wan'Dale started for you.
He did. He absolutely did. You know, he wasn't so bad. So look, I mean, we can't sit here and pick apart everybody's transactions and act like they make the right decisions all the time. But the last thing I was going to say was my draft tip is really try to balance your FAAB. I went back, I looked at all my transactions, and there was definitely some wasteful spending. $10 on DeMarcus Robinson, then $5 on Tyler Johnson. I used 15% of my budget on 2 pretty useless Rams receivers. $4 on Jeff Wilson. That was probably when Achane got hurt. I don't even know. $2 on Wan'Dale.
Achane never got hurt.
Achane did get hurt, but then there was a bye, and then he came back.
Oh.
But yeah, it could have been when Mostert got hurt. $14 on Cam Akers. Not a bad. He stunk, but he got the role that I was hoping. $6 on Clyde. Like, you're going to have some mistakes. I actually did a decent job in this league saving money. And then late in the year, I spent $14 on Cedric Tillman, which really could have paid off if he didn't get hurt. And then I spent $6 on Jaleel McLaughlin, and that helped me big time. So we got to really, I hope nobody spent 50% of their FAAB on Isaiah Likely. I know it happened in a lot of leagues.
But what if you did on Jordan Mason? Would you have been happy about that?
Yeah, well, that I think was the right time to do it. Although, did we feel that way? Did we know it was going to be Jordan
I remember
Mason?
Dave and I had a pretty good argument on Likely versus Mason in week 1.
Yeah, look, I just think that you got to make the playoffs, but if you can have a little bit of a bully FAAB budget in the playoffs and you can really dictate who goes where, you can get the free agents you want, it is a huge advantage. So I'm going to try to be a little bit more judicious with my FAAB.
You also got to know, again, knowing your league, $0 bids versus having to have money.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And is there first come, first serve during the week?
Like even spending $1 on a DST or $1 on a kicker, you do that, a total of, for kickers and DSTs, you do that a total of 10, 11 times throughout the year, could make a difference at the end of the season when you're in the playoffs and there's a running back that everybody wants. All right. That's all I got. Let's take a break. Did we get to everybody's tips? Okay. Let's take a break. Come back with some emails and the Fantasy Cops on Fantasy Football Today.
Who's in? Who's out? Let the madness begin. The NCAA Men's Basketball Championship Selection Show on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Oh, man, I was going to get the Fantasy Cops music up, but I had Dave's barking dog sound instead. Here we go. All right. You got any league disputes? Send in your Fantasy Cops emails, even if it's a little bit rough. We'll try to smooth it out for you. Okay, fantasyfootball@cbsi.com is the email address. Put Fantasy Cops in the subject line. This one comes from Adam Plank, and he says, "Dear Matt, Ozzy, Orlando, and Austin."
Braves.
Oh, yeah? Oh, Olsen, Albies, Orlando Bloom. Who's Orlando?
I'm not sure, but Austin Riley.
Austin Riley, that's right. Okay, good job, Jamey. I need justification. Recently, I was asked to join a very unique dynasty league. Each team consisted of 3 kickers, 2 starters, and a bench spot.
Quit right now.
What'd you say?
Quit right now.
Yeah. You should have joined it.
He was just asked to join. He didn't say he did join.
I thought it was a fun idea. Okay, now the real email starts. A couple of days later, I was invited to join another dynasty league called 2 QBs, and that's your team. I thought that would be fun, so I joined. Sure enough, each team was 2 QBs, and that's it. No bench spots. I ended the draft with Josh Allen and Justin Fields. Suddenly, each team had a ton of positions added. 3 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight ends, and about 8 flex spots, as well as IDP. I was confused, but I assumed that we were going to have a supplemental draft. Then the commissioner said on the group chat that we were allowed to add players from waivers. Being a savvy fantasy manager, I added everybody. Barkley, Puka, Bijan. If a player was projected to go in the first 3 rounds, I had them. It was the dynasty team of all dynasty teams. Turns out, the unspoken rule of the league was that you can only have players from the same team as your quarterbacks. Obviously, I wasn't super pleased. I read through the rules and the commissioner notes, no mention of this rule. So I asked about it in the group chat. They assured me they were pretty sure someone had mentioned that rule at some point, that the only players you could pick up had to be on the same team as your quarterbacks, and he had Josh Allen and Justin Fields. In addition, they said if I added a player not on my quarterback's team again, I'd be removed from the league. At that point, I left voluntarily.
Right. Good for you.
I need the Fantasy Cop's opinion. Am I justified in being peeved and leaving the league?
You saved yourself so much hassle. This league is just like ripe for shenanigans. Unwritten rules, the name of the league, and then suddenly you've got to start IDPs. It sounds like a massive cluster. Good for you.
The name of the league, you're right. 2 QBs, and that's that.
2 QBs, and that's your team.
That's your team.
How is that an IDP league? How are you supposed to know? You can only have players from your QB's team. What a total disaster.
Yeah, this is one of the worst leagues I've ever heard. You joined 2 of the worst leagues I've ever heard of in like a week. Congratulations, Adam. You should leave them both. All right, let's get to some other emails here. Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Don't be surprised if you hear these on the Dynasty Show with Heath. This is from Matt. I mean, every email we get is Dynasty. I was offered
a year. Yeah.
I was offered CeeDee Lamb for picks 108 and 111. I have to take this, right?
Oh, yes.
You'd rather have Lamb?
Yes.
You're giving up 108 and 111 for CeeDee Lamb? Yeah, you got to do it.
All right. This is, yeah, I agree, Matt. When I responded to your email, I thought you were on the other side of this trade. Definitely take Lamb there. Okay. Thoughts on the following trade? Name and city, Dave. I don't have one.
Doris from Doral, Florida.
Okay. Doral from Doris, Florida gave up 1.4 and Keenan Allen for Ricky Pearsall, a 2025 second round pick, which is 2.3, and a 2026 second round pick. Ugh. All right. So we're getting Pearsall, pick 2.3, and a 2026 second round pick.
No.
We're giving up 1.4 and Keenan Allen.
I think 1.4 is going to end up being a pretty good player.
Super flex or 1 QB?
I don't know.
Even in 1 QB.
If it's super flex, I don't mind it. In 1 QB, I don't love it.
This is Crosby, by the way. I'm looking at the email now. I don't think. Oh, it is Superflex, and it's tight end premium.
Yeah, then I don't mind it because now you're getting some guys pushed back into the 2.3 range. I still wouldn't have done it, but it's a little bit better because you assume there'll be 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks that get drafted before 2.3, depending on who that third quarterback emerges to being where they end up.
Yeah.
And so you just got, I mean, like if Pearsall hits, you're great.
All right, the second trade for Crosby. What would we say her name was? Diane?
Doris.
All right, it's really Crosby. Crosby Doris, we'll call him. If you're reading the notes, he actually updated me. So here's the updated trade. Michael Penix in a Superflex league and pick 104 for Saquon Barkley and Mixon. Or Penix and 304 for just Barkley.
Done.
Which one?
Can you win this year?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, think about the difference in value between Penix and Barkley in a Superflex Dynasty league.
Right.
If you're winning now, you're doing that trade in a heartbeat.
You have to.
304 is the throwaway. It's basically you're doing Penix for Barkley right now.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, do that. Third trade, 104 for 106 and something. What round or player equivalent would make you drop down 2 picks?
I mean, that's such a loaded what player.
I would do it for a second round pick. I would drop down 2 spots to get.
Yeah, especially so you're getting one.
I don't think you'd get it.
Would you do it for a third round pick?
Probably not.
Unless you have to have a pretty good idea of what the first 5 picks are, so you know who you're getting at 6. So if it's the same player that you wanted at 4, and you're getting additional capital,
Yeah.
Like we know Janty will be 1. Cam Ward will be up there. Tight end premium, you said. So Tyler Warren's going to be up there. Top receiver will be up there.
I think Sanders.
Amari Hampton will be up there. I like that top 5.
You say Hampton now, but there could be a running back that ends up in a spot,
Better,
That's
yep.
fine. That's fine.
or
So
just as good.
And Sanders.
Hampton is a placeholder. I agree.
All right, this one's from Rich. Got in my first of 3 dynasty leagues last summer, and like a dope, I took Jordan Love over Lamar Jackson. My other quarterbacks are Brock Purdy, Gardner Minshew, and Drew Lock. I'm trying to get Jaden Daniels from a team manager that has him and Brock Purdy. What? But you said you have Brock Purdy. He needs a running back. Would you trade either Breece Hall or Chase Brown and Jordan Love or Brock Purdy for Jaden Daniels? So he's got Love and Purdy, Hall and Brown. Would you trade 2, give me a running back quarterback combo for Jaden Daniels?
Chase Brown and either quarterback would be great. I think if you had to give Breece Hall and one of those quarterbacks for Jaden Daniels, and you really wanted Jaden Daniels, then it's probably worth doing.
Are you in win now mode?
Don't know.
I mean, he's got Brock Purdy and is playing against Brock Purdy, so who knows?
Who's the other quarterback? Purdy and who?
Jordan Love.
I think if I'm win now, I'm probably standing pat. Because
His other running backs, he says, are terrible, and they are.
They
I'm
are.
reading up the names that would make you laugh.
So that's why I would probably stand pat.
He does have picks 105 and 112. Yeah, I think you're not in a bad spot if it's a 2 quarterback league with Purdy and Love. All right, this is from Grant.
Hold on. If you trade one of the running backs and one of the quarterbacks to get Daniels, then in theory, you should be able to find a running back at 105. I don't know if he'll be as good as Breece Hall, but somebody who can at least be a starter. Hampton, Johnson, Judkins, one of those dudes.
Grant says,
Grant.
Dear
That's a Grant.
Tommy, Cooper, Angela, and Ainsley. Oh, is this Rugrats? I don't remember a Cooper on there. No, it's definitely not. What is this? Oh, this is Landman. I'm very sorry. I don't know the names that well yet. I've only seen 2 episodes. Oh, that's embarrassing after I went plugging it yesterday. What is your biggest dynasty blunder in fantasy? I'll go first. I have a team that is in Rugrats. I have a team that's in win now mode. 14 teams, super flex. Let's see.
Now I'm picturing the Rugrats fighting over oil.
Okay, he's got a good team, but he needed a tight end, so he drafted Bowers 8th overall. I then proceeded to trade him, thinking the Raiders quarterbacks wouldn't be good enough for Dalton Kincaid and Darnell Mooney.
Oh, gosh.
That's his biggest dynasty blunder. Mine is trading to Jamey. Jamey proposed the trade. I thought I won it. In fact, I even called Dave and I was like, should I make this trade? And he said yes. But in retrospect, just awful. I got Bigsby and Wan'Dale Robinson for Bucky Irving before the season started. And that's changed.
I told you yes on that?
Yeah.
Not before the season started.
No, when was it?
A couple weeks into the season.
Okay, early on. Bigsby and Wan'Dale for Bucky Irving.
I believe it if I told you once the season started.
Yeah, it was Dave. Yes, bad guy. Right. It was Dave's fault. Thank you. Oh, look at his avatar. Love that.
I have 2. One I told you recently was I had drafted in 2 of the 3 or 2. The majority of my dynasties, I drafted Tyrone Tracy, and in our league, I had the choice of Tracy versus Vidal, and I took Vidal over Tracy. That was my most recent blunder. And the other one, which really I couldn't control, was I think we were talking about this. You asked the question yesterday or on Monday, like it was when you made your trade, and you said sometimes you just trade to trade.
Mm-hmm.
So this was in the late great Mike Taglier's fantasy league, dynasty league. Everybody was trading, and I was like one of those teams, like on the cusp of competing for title, not just playoffs, but competing for title. And I needed a receiver, and I traded a 1st-round pick and Michael Gallup for T.Y. Hilton. And then 2 months later, Andrew Luck retires.
Do you know who was used for that 1st-round pick?
I believe it was a future first, and I think it ended up being it was a running back. Might have been Cam Akers.
Okay, not bad. You still may have won that trade, but yeah, that's a tough one. Do you remember what football game happened the night Andrew Luck retired?
It was a Hurricanes game. Hurricanes Gators.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Hurricanes Gators?
Yeah, well, I was at the game. It was in Orlando.
It was a disaster for the Canes.
No, it was a close game. It came down to like a pathetic
Right, like
fourth
the
down.
Gators kept the Hurricanes in the game. It wasn't because of anything the Hurricanes were doing.
DJ Dallas, I think, like had a long touchdown in that game. One of the only long plays for him. And then I remember leaving the stadium and someone telling me, I think Chris Towers called me. It was like, Andrew Luck retired. I'm like, I can't do a podcast right now. I'm sorry.
We were live on Heath and I were live on CBS Sports Radio.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were on national radio breaking the news.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That show was 10 to midnight. So that it was late breaking news for sure.
Yeah, that was fun.
That's cool. All right. Well, screw the Gators. Okay. We will talk to you.
There's a question on you in the chat if you want to answer it.
Oh, this one from John Paul.
No, the one above it. But that one too.
All right. We'll do both.
Now you got to answer both.
John Paul Taylor, would you sell Anthony Richardson, Jaden Reed, and Tyrone Tracy? I'm a middling team, and I think I'd rather take shots in this draft. I've been offered a mid and late first and 3 mid seconds.
For all 3 of them?
If it's a 1 QB league, 100%.
I'm ready to jump off the Richardson train. You can't trust a guy with that last name or even close to that last name. Reed, I want to believe in Reed. Tracy, I bet 2 years from now, we're not talking about Tyrone Tracy.
We might be a few months from now not talking about Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah,
You're getting 2 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks for Richardson, Reed, and
yeah,
Tracy.
I'm taking that deal.
Yeah, I think so.
Might be a super flex, but I'm still taking that deal.
All right, this one's from Michael Quenzel. Should I accept DJ Moore and 111 for 103 and pick 206? So he gives up
Are you sure
103.
26 R2 isn't some sort of like robot from Star Wars?
Yeah,
If you're getting a robot that can like do chores around your house and send holograms, I would take that.
All right, so again, he's going from he's giving up 103 and 26 R2, which I think is 2.6. Getting 111 and DJ.
People
Moore.
listening have no idea what's happening now.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it so much either. But you really,
I don't think I like it either.
You could argue that 103 is really not a great pick this year. Like you're not getting Genty, and
Nope.
if it's not a super flex, you should always tell us in Dynasty if it's super flex.
I think the thing though is again like
He can tell us right now.
Oh yeah, Michael, is it super flex?
What the hell is 26 R2?
he just commented, so he should be able to.
No, he's giving advice to John Paul.
He's listening. Michael, you have 15 seconds to answer, or you're never allowed to comment again.
We need 26 R2 to take Orly for a walk.
All right. Well, this is
He's too busy
this is suspenseful.
building a droid.
But there we go. Second round 20. Yes. Okay. So 2026. My bad. Okay. It is super flex, and 26 R2 is not 2.6. It's this 2026.
Have you ever seen somebody write a future pick that way? Am I missing something that's how we?
No, but I should have figured that. Should I have
Michael
figured
comes to us from the future.
Yeah. All right. So let's
He's
do it
a
again.
Jedi.
103 and a 2026 round 2 pick for DJ Moore and 111.
If you're contending now, yes.
If you're contending now, you're taking DJ Moore in
Yes.
111.
Yes.
I don't think I'm making the deal.
But if you're at pick 103, you're probably not contending now.
No deal.
He's not contending. His team.
Yeah, he
is
says his
bad.
team's bad. No, I'd rather have 103.
It's nice to interact in real time with people. All right. That's it for today's show. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you Monday at some point with free agency updates. If there's breaking news over the weekend, you might hear from us then too. And I'm going to go do some Sam Darnold research because
26 R2 end the show.
these are not the outros you're looking for. Talk to you Monday.